shofar for 1 second, it's not going to do the trick. A 1 second blow to, if it has to be 2 seconds, so the 1 second is not enough. So you were not intending to blow a proper blowing of the shofar, if you want to mention to the group that we're on, and you blew, so there was no intent of fulfilling the mitzvah. Or not only there was no intent of fulfilling the mitzvah, I did not even attempt to do the amount that would have qualified for the mitzvah. I only intended to blow for a second. I did not intend to blow for the time that's necessary. Or I wasn't even intending to blow a sound. I just wanted, let's say, blow into the shofar to clear the shofar. Like some people blow into their glasses, they want to make then they clean it, right? But here they blew into the shofar, and then the sound came out. So the Mishnah stated, what's the law? It doesn't, lo yotza. The Mishnah stated you do not get credit for the blowing of the shofar if it was done like that. And then the Mishnah stated, v'hashomea min misasek lo yotza. If somebody heard, if I heard, someone else heard, I was waiting, let's say I saw you with the shofar, and I saw you going to blow the shofar. And let's say I thought that you were going to blow, let's say, the right amount, the right size. But you were not a person, but you never were intending to do the right amount. So we say the person who hears from a misasek also is no good. The same way the misasek, the one who actually made the sound, does not get credit. So someone who heard from him also don't get credit. I want to say, what's the chidush? What's the novelty? Perhaps the novelty is, even if you heard from him with the intent that you had in mind that to fulfill your mitzvah, right? You saw the guy with a shofar in his hand. You thought you thought he planned on doing a good job, but he never intended to do the good job. You don't get credit if you heard him if he never intended to do the right amount, right? That would be maybe the chidush. So the Gemara says, aval hamshamea min hamashmiya la'atzmo. So there's an inference, but if you heard from somebody who was intending just not to blow the shofar, you cannot fulfill your obligation by listening to someone who did not intend to do the mitzvah himself. But what about if you heard from somebody who intended to fulfill the mitzvah, but he wasn't thinking about you? He didn't have you in mind. He didn't know you were even in the room. You came into the room, and he's blowing the shofar. You see, he's making a bracha on the shofar, and you come into this a big room. The sound goes very far, and you had in mind to fill your mitzvah. He didn't have you in mind. He didn't know you were there. Do you get credit by hearing you heard the shofar? He intended to blow the shofar properly. He blew it properly. He had in mind to do the mitzvah of shofar, but he did not have you in mind. So does he have to have you in mind in order for you to fulfill your responsibility of the shofar? So the Gemara says, the inference from the Mishnah sounds like that you would get credit, even though he did not have you in mind. And that's what the Gemara is going to say, that there seems to be a problem. Why? We'll see. Because the only thing the Mishnah said, the Mishnah says, if you heard from someone who was misasek, you heard from someone who was not intending to fulfill the mitzvah at all. Not only that, that's the type of person you heard from. The Mishnah could have said a bigger chiddush. Even if you heard from someone that was intending to fulfill the mitzvah, but as long as he didn't have you in mind, you don't get credit. The fact that the Mishnah limited the case by only saying you heard from someone who was engaged in the shofar, not for any purpose of blowing, not of the shofar, that's when, if you heard from such a guy, you don't get credit. The implication is, but if it's a notch higher, that he was actually intending to blow the shofar properly, and he blew it properly, you would get credit by listening to his blowing of the shofar. That's what the Gemara, you see, anytime a Mishnah says a case, if the law of the case would apply even in a different level of a different type of case, which would be more novel, the Mishnah should have said the more novel, we call it the more bigger chidush, the thing that we would not have known. If I tell you A, and you could have told me if B is also the same rule as A, tell me B. If B is a bigger idea, a thing that I would not have known from A. So if to tell me A, you don't tell me B, implies only A would the law be that way, but B, the law would be different. We have a lawyer in the house. Is that clear? But the fact that the Mishnah stated, the Mishnah had a choice. The Mishnah says, it gives a case that if somebody hears from somebody else, you don't get credit. The listener doesn't get credit. What was the case? The Mishnah says, if the guy you heard from had no intention of blowing the shofar at all, no intention of fulfilling the mitzvah, but he blew the shofar, and you heard it, so we say in that case, you don't get credit. What's the inference implies? But what about if he had a mind to blow the shofar, but he didn't have you in mind? That would sound like, good morning, Jaime.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are 33b. We just started the Gemara over here, this new point of the Gemara, that the Mishnah stated, if you hear from somebody who was involved in a shofar, and the person that you heard from had no intention to blow the shofar, no intention to do it right, you heard it, but he had no intention to blow. For sure, if he had no intention to blow it right, he did not have you in mind to cover you with the mitzvah, right? What happens today? The Baal Tokeyah, the one who blows the shofar, he has everybody in mind when he blows the shofar, that he should be motzi them with their obligation. He has them in mind. The Mishnah's case is he has nobody in mind because he doesn't have a mind to do the mitzvah at all, right? He has a mind to, let's say, blow the shofar, not for the right amount of time that's needed. Let's say, like we said, the shofar, the size of the duration of the key has a certain duration. He did not have in mind to blow for the proper duration of time. So he has nobody in mind. He has nobody in mind, and not only has nobody in mind, he doesn't have himself in mind to blow properly. And even if it came out properly, the Mishnah says he doesn't get credit because he had no intention to do it right. He had no intention to do the mitzvah. He had no intention to do it right. He doesn't get credit. But then the Mishnah said, not only he doesn't get credit, but somebody else who was listening to him, even if the person who was listening to him had in mind to fulfill his own mitzvah, but since the guy he heard from had no intention at all of blowing a proper blow, therefore the guy who heard from him does not get credit. The implication is, well, what about if the guy who blew the shofar had a mind to do a proper blowing of the shofar, but just he didn't have me, the listener, in mind? The inference is, then the listener would get credit. That's what it sounds like the Gemara says. Because if it's true that the listener won't get credit even when the guy blew for himself properly, but as long as he did not have the listener in mind, the listener doesn't get credit. So why didn't the Mishnah tell me that case? Why does the Mishnah say the listener doesn't get credit? The guy blowing did not have a mind to even blow anything. It could have even said when the guy blew it had a mind to blow a perfect sound, but he didn't have me in mind. The fact that the Mishnah only said that this listener does not get credit when the blower did not have in mind anything, he had in mind nothing not to blow a sound at all, implies if the blower had in mind to blow a sound, the listener would get credit, even though the blower did not have the listener in mind. There's a lot. I hope it's because as long as you're with an earshot and you heard it and you had in mind, even though the blower did not have you in mind, that's the inference of the Gemara. And the Gemara says this is the Gemara says, but this is not in sync with Rav Zera. And Rav Zera is a later rabbi. Rav Zera would not argue on the Mishnah. Morning, Morris. He wouldn't argue on the Mishnah. So what is the Gemara? Aaron, welcome back. Good to see you. So what does the Gemara say? Lema, the Gemara, we are on the art scroll. It's 33b1 on the right column. But if you heard from someone who was blowing for himself, even though he doesn't have you in mind, the inference is yatsa. You know, we all know the bottom line. We know from the halacha that when you want to blow a shofar, you're not only supposed to have yourself in mind, you have the people in mind. But we only know because we're after the fact. We're after the Gemara. We know what the law is. But here the Gemara is developing, is discussing the origin of the law, because who was the source of that law, and we have even maybe an inference that might say otherwise, and that's what the Gemara is dealing with this issue. So the Gemara says, "Lema tahavit tifsud Rav Zera." The inference from the Mishnah seemed not to be going the way Rav Zera says. The Amal Rav Zera l'shameh. Rav Zera said to his attendant, who was the man attendant, a Jew who was taking care of him. What did he say? He said, "Ichavein v'tekali." I want you to, when you're blowing the shofar, have me in mind. I want you to blow the shofar and have me to cover me with your blowing of the shofar. So Rav Zera seems to indicate by the fact that he tells his attendant, his gabai, make believe the Haron of that time. If Haron would be blowing the shofar, Haron, have me in mind. If you're blowing the shofar, have me in mind. Why do you have to tell him have me in mind? Because it sounds like if I would not have told him to have me in mind, I would not be covered. But what do you mean? The inference from the Mishnah says you would cover it even if he doesn't have you in mind. That's what seems to be the inference from the Mishnah. So the Gemara says no. This is not you can't use this as a proof. You can't, the fact that Mishnah gave that case does not mean the Mishnah would hold that if the person is blowing a shofar for himself, the listener could be covered even if the blower did not have the listener in mind. No. So why not? Because you have to have the listener in mind. So then the question is, so why did the Mishnah give the case that the blower had no intention of blowing properly? The Mishnah should have said, even when the blower had intention of blowing properly, the listener is not covered. So the Gemara says the Mishnah wants to be uniform. The Mishnah wants to keep talking the similar situation. Remember, they learned by heart. The Gemara was not originally meant to be written down. The Gemara was only written down as time went on when people started forgetting. They couldn't remember everything. So therefore, to make it easy for the people to memorize and to remember the statements of the Mishnayot, they try to keep it, in a certain rhythm, certain style, that'll be easy. So therefore, since the beginning of the Mishnah used a case of Misaseh, since the beginning of the Mishnah spoke about the case of Misaseh, which the case was the person who blew the shofar was not intending to blow the shofar, so too the next case, the Sefer, also used that type of case. But it's true that it could be that the Sefer would not only hold in the case when you were not intending to blow, even when you were intending to blow, as long as you did not have the listener in mind, the listener does not get credit. So here's a phenomenon. You have a person blowing the shofar, intending to blow the shofar for himself. He gets credit, but the listener doesn't get credit. You heard the shofar, he blew the shofar, but he had himself in mind, but didn't have you in mind. So that's what the Gemara says. Tana Sefer Nami Misaseh. Therefore, the Sefer. So therefore, the Gemara is saying the reason why the Mishnah used a certain style of the case, even though the law would extend even further, but the only reason why it stated it in that type of case was because it wanted to keep the unity of the Mishnah. Is that clear, everybody? That's what the Gemara wants to say. Okay. Now let's continue in the Mishnah. Now a new Mishnah on 33b1. Seder Tekiyot. Now we're discussing the Tekiyot, the sounds that we blow. We blow on. We know we have in the Amidah, in the Shemona Esrei, in the Musaf, we have something called verses of Malchiot, of kingship, Zechronot, remembrances, and Shofrot, the verses that deal with the shofar, right? And that's why we said we have a special 9 blessing Amidah on Rosh Hashana. Because of those extra, we have to have a special bracha for that focus on shofar, Zechronot, and therefore we have the blessing of the Shemona Esrei is the 9 blessing Shemona Esrei. So we have, and we know that when you're going to talk about, after you talk about Hashem's kingship, Malchiot, you conclude with the blowing of you're supposed to connect the blowing of the shofar to those verses of Malchiot. When you talk about Zichronot, the remembrances, Hashem remembering the binding of Yitzchak and so on, you also conclude with the shofar. And when you talk about shofar, you also conclude with shofar. So we have the blowing of the shofar connected to those 3 ideas of kingship, remembrances, and shofar. So now, the Mishnah states, Seder Tekiyot Shalosh, Shal Shalosh. That means in every Seder, good morning, we're going to have, we have something called Malchiot. We have something called kingship, verses that talk about, or a bracha that talks about the kingship of Hashem. That we're going to blow 3, we're going to have 3 sounds. We're going to have Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. And each one of those sets, in each one, when we talk about God's kingship, and we have 10 verses that talk about God's kingship, and the last verse that we say is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's the last verse that we state, and we conclude with the kingship, with the blowing of 3 Tekiah with a Trua with a Tekiah. Now, when we say the word Trua, the word Trua sometimes has multiple meanings. There's the Torah word Trua, and there's the today's word Trua. The Torah, when it comes to Rosh Hashana, says Rosh Hashana is a day of Trua. Now, what is Trua? Trua means a breaking sound, like a crying sound. But there's a question in the Gemara, what is that crying sound? Is the crying sound what we today, if I want to refer to a Trua sound, we refer to a Trua sound as the sound. That we call Trua. Or is the Trua of the Torah what we call today a Shvarim? Two. The Shvarim is longer. Each sound, it's also, Shvarim is break, it means a break, it's a breaking sound, but each one is longer than the sound. Or is the Trua of the Torah a combination, or what we call a cholent? Is it a Shvarim Trua? Is it what we call a two, right? That's called Shvarim Trua. And some commentators understand that it was not clear to the people as time went on. People weren't sure what is the Trua of the Torah. Is the Trua but we what the sound is it the two, or is it the combination? Because it's a crying sound, and people cry differently. There's some people that cry or people cry or there's some people that cry There's different way people cry, and since it's a crying sound, morning. Since it's a crying sound, so we do all three combinations because we're not sure which is the sound that we need to go ahead and blow for to fill the midst of truah. Others understand any of those sounds would work. Whether you just do the sound or you do the two sound, or the combo would work. But why did they enact that we're supposed to do all sets, right? As you know, we do all of them. It's because we did not want someone to be in Aleppo and they blow it one way because their crying sound is one way, and they go to Iraq or they go to Iran, they do it a different way, and you go to another country in Yemen, they do it a different way, and it would look like there's two Torah. Looks like there's not one law. It looks like the Judaism is being practiced differently in different parts of the world in a way that would maybe and would look like not appropriate. Just like, if an Ashkenazi, if certain people put on tefillin on Chol Hamoed, right? So if you come into a Sfard shul, you don't nobody the Ashkenaz person who puts on tefillin is not going to put on tefillin, but nobody's putting on tefillin. It looks like there's two different groups. It's so open. So that was how some explain why we do all the combinations, just to make the community look more like one universal blowing. Therefore, we all do the same things. Whatever synagogue in the world you go to, we're all doing the same thing. That's how some understand. So when we're talking about truah, so sometimes we say the word truah, we refer to the word that the Torah used, truah, which could mean what we call today a shvarim. It's not clear what the word truah means, the Torah, right? What is this truah sound? Or sometimes when we use the word truah, we mean two. So we have to know what are we referring to. So here, the Mishnah stated, we have the tekiyot, we're going to blow a set of tekiah, trua, tekiah. Now the Torah says 3 times the word trua. 3 times we find in the Torah the word trua. Because the Torah says the word trua 3 times, so to fulfill the biblical obligation of blowing the shofar, you have to blow 3 truot. 3. But each trua has to be preceded by a tekiyah and followed by a tekiyah. Okay, that's how. So technically, if we know what is the truah of the Torah, if we could identify it clearly, so then you could just technically, how many sounds would you have to blow to fill your mitzvah? 9, we'll call it 9 sounds. The tekiyah, trua, tekiyah, tekiyah, trua, tekiyah, tekiyah, trua, tekiyah. That's how you fulfill your obligation of the Torah. So the Torah wasn't asking so much of us to blow on Rosh Hashanah. Today, the custom is we blow 100 sounds, right? Because we do a lot of sounds before the Musaf, during the Musaf, after Musaf. We do 100 sounds. But according to the Torah's obligation, and of course there's reasons why we do it. We'll see in the Gemara. But the Torah's obligation was 9 sounds. Kia, trua, tekiah, and you do it 3 times. You do that set, and then you got it. But the shvarim is the question: shvarim was all about the truah? What is the truah? What is that breaking? So some say maybe the shvarim is the truah. Maybe the shvarim is that sound. Maybe that is the truah of the Torah. The Torah says truah. What does the Torah even say truah? Does it mean a shvarim, like they, or it's like David is saying, or the shvarim, or truah means a truah, what we call tututu, or there's a shvarim, or the truah of the Torah is both the shvarim and followed by a truah. So therefore, we do all sets. I want to wish everyone a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you all for joining. Every word of Torah is a mitzvah. So how many, you clock John F. Kennedy at 200 words a minute. So you say, see, 5 minutes is 1,000 mitzvot. 10 minutes, do your math, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, looking forward. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Jaime. Great to see you back.
Thank you.
All the best. Take care. All right, thank you. Jaime, great to see you. You too. I'll see you upstairs, Mr. Haber. Yeah.